Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Rhonda Page Sheya from the class of 1978. Hello, Rhonda.
Hi there. How are you?
Very good. So we always like to begin and say, where are you? Because that's where everybody wants to know, where are you and what are you doing?
Well, I am in outside of Denver, Colorado. I live in a suburb of Denver with my husband and our two grown children. And what am I doing? Well, I'm just about ready to retire.
That's
in
awesome.
exactly 10 days. So
Wow.
that's what I'm doing. I have a couple of projects I'll be working on after that one, which is kind of fun. We can talk about, which is with the Space Force. So that's going to be cool. But I'm just about ready to toss in my hat for working for other people and just pick up some projects. So.
That's awesome. And we will go over your wonderful career, which is really just an amazing journey. And it all begins, I think, as we were talking beforehand, with these interesting connections that your family had with WIU, because like some people find WIU in an interesting sort of, they stick something on the map and they come to WIU that way. But you had a special connection that's family related. Can you talk about that?
Well, I grew up in two places because my family was divorced and my father was very active. And so I was in Springfield, Illinois frequently for the summers and holidays, and in Colorado. No fault of Illinois, but I chose to live in Colorado. Can't know. But anyway, and what my family has gone to Western since almost its inception. My grandfather, who was born in around 1888, I think 1888 or 1889, went to college here. He was a teacher. He taught in a one-room schoolhouse outside of New Berlin, Illinois, in that area. And I'm sitting at his desk that was in that schoolhouse that was handmade back then for him right now. And my father, my uncles, two of my aunts, Uncle Warren, Uncle Ray, my dad, Harry, my aunt, Georgia Lee, and my aunt, Catherine, all went to Western, as well as myself, my brother, many cousins, and some of their children now. There's been about 5 generations of family members going to Western Illinois University, and we've all done very well. It's been a great school for us.
What a wonderful Leatherneck tradition. And you also mentioned that while you were an undergrad, you had the pleasure of having your uncle inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I was at he was coming up and I knew he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and at the football game, because we always went to every game, we always did that. And they introduced him into the Athletic Hall of Fame at Western. He was a pitcher and he was also played basketball. And in fact, my uncle was the winningest basketball coach in Illinois history for many, many, many years. He took the Springfield team to a state championship against, and that time they didn't discriminate based on the size of the school. So he played the schools in Chicago, he played the schools in St. Louis, and he won 6 times in a row. So most people remember him for basketball.
So when you come to WIU, let's talk about some of the things you were involved with, because you got involved with the radio station at the time. Mm-hmm. What was that like back in that time?
Oh God, it was fun. I should tell you the funniest story that ever happened at WIUFM, but kind of embarrassing. I got involved. I was in theater. I was also involved in the Greek system. And then, of course, at WIUFM, I love that. And I used to do the announcements from the top of the building when the kids were walking to class. And that was one of my favorite things, too. But the WIU, I'll never forget this, FM, a girl named Debbie Henson, I think was her last name. She and I were in the studio, and I had a little shift, on the air. And back then you actually had the turntables. You had to back time the music and do all the things that you had to do to be on the air, and they always have rickety old equipment in the studios. At least they did back then.
Yep.
And you're reaching across and you're doing this, and she's in the studio. I come in to replace her. She reaches across and her chair collapses and she falls. All you can hear on the air, is a bunch of crashing. Of course, she said a really bad word when she fell, which went out. And then I immediately reached over her and shoved in the cart that said students are now assisting with the broadcast, as if they didn't know. And she's laying on the floor. We're laughing hysterically. I mean, we can't stop laughing. And of course, she had said a really bad word, in fact, and I don't think it got bleated out. And we get up, and we're laughing so hard, I'm tripping over her. I tripped over her trying to put the card in to just turn off the, the live feed. And we both get up on the thing, and we look up, and there's the teacher that's in charge of the station coming down the hall. His face was so red. I swear to God, you can see steam coming out of his ears. And we're like, and he comes in, and he got really mad at her and kicked her off her shift. And he said he was going to flunk her, and then he got mad at me, and I said, I didn't do anything. He said, you didn't stop her in time. And I went, he let us back on the air, but it was after great mea culpas.
Well, sometimes being scared a little bit when you're in college, it really does kind of settle things down a little bit for you.
Oh God. And the people that were listening, our friends were like, we got back to the sorority house. We were both in the same sorority, and they were on the floor. They were like, what happened? All we heard was like chairs falling and cussing. And I'm like,
So you were part of the Delta Zeta sorority.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about the impact that sorority life had on your development as a person, because I'm sure you have some lifelong friends.
Oh, I do. And in fact, I still see many of them to this day, even though I'm out here in Colorado. A couple of them live out here. We are, of course, on Facebook. We're all together, and we have get together every once in a while. It was truly a great experience. Not only was I in my sorority, but I was president of Pan-Hellenic, which is the association for the Greeks, for the sororities. And I loved it. I thought it taught us a lot of things, but some of the things I learned in the sorority, and one interesting thing was the reason I got my first job in broadcasting was because of WIU Delta Zetas. And the reason for that was I had graduated from school. I was looking for a job in the media, and I was like, I'm never going to get one in Denver, because that at that time was a top 20 market. And I'm like, but I don't want to go somewhere icky. I want to be in Denver. And I was at a alumni meeting, and they were looking at their philanthropy, which was an organization that worked with deaf children, which I'm still involved with today. And the woman there came up to me, and she said, did you just graduate? It was alumni. I said, yes. And she goes, I'm pregnant. I need somebody to fill in for 3 months. And we produce the Kim Listen Radiothon. So it'd be producing our radiothon with the radio station that is one of the top stations in the city. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. And I got to meet all these people, the general manager, the program director, everybody through that, and then ended up starting my career in broadcasting. So it kind of happened serendipitously. I'd been sending out tapes and trying to get, jobs, and it wasn't getting anywhere. And there you go. Went to the alumni meeting, and that was that.
Well, I think that goes to show, and we tell our students still today, the importance of networking. Mm-hmm. and having connections, because they're so much interrelated, and somebody is always opening the door for somebody else, and that's a lot of ways that people get started in the business.
Well, and one of the general managers, she's not here anymore, in the Denver market. When I started, there weren't any women doing that. I ended up being a general manager, but I was one of the few. And then now there's a lot. And who was about 10 years younger than me. I was sitting in Amy's office one day, and we were chatting, and I looked at her wall, and she had a picture of Rocky. And I said, what's that? And she goes, I went to Western. So we were 10 years apart, but she had gone to Western also, graduated in communications, and is now a big market manager for iHeartMedia, and was overseeing, but at that time was with Intercom, was overseeing like 6 stations in the Denver area. Was probably one of the top general managers in the market. And we both found out we both had graduated from Western in communications, and television and radio.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Small world. You never know.
Yeah. So we're going to remain in the WIU years, because I want to go back and talk a little bit about a professor that you had, that I also had the pleasure of having when I was an undergrad, was Dr. Lee. And he was a fantastic photojournalism professor. Can you talk about what you remember from him?
Well, he was truly a mentor to me. We became good friends. In addition to that, I was an assistant for him. At the time that I was there, he was testifying before Congress on the Koreagate scandal. And so he had me go over his testimony and edit it so that it sounded, because English was a second language for him. And then he was on Good Morning America, and I had to run interfacing with him with Good Morning America and things like that. And I learned so much from him. But in addition to that, he was truly a brilliant professor when it came to teaching you how to tell a story with your camera, and the types of things that the journalism department actually, my minor in journalism paid off as much as my major in broadcasting, because and I'll go into this in a second, but I give Dr. Lee a great deal of credit for my success, because I had learned skill sets that weren't always what you brought to a radio station. And what I found was those skill sets were needed. And when you're able to cross perform, not just do one job, but you're able to do multiple jobs and bring a value to the table that's above what your employer expects, you get noticed and you get promoted. And that's what happened with the photojournalism. And I've used that throughout my career as much as I've used anything, was what I learned in terms of photography and journalism and sending out press releases and getting the exposure that you need to be successful, particularly if you're trying to promote a business. I mean, everyone needs to promote their business. And those skill sets were absolutely critical to, I believe, to my success and to transcending from being originally a promotion manager to being a general manager, because that doesn't happen often.
So one last thing about WIU in the 1970s, the enrollment was as high as it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And so can you reminisce a little bit about what it was like to be on campus during those years?
Goodness, so much fun. There was about, I think, 16,000 students, if I'm not mistaken, when I was there. And it was, but it wasn't too crowded. It was just a good size. We had a lot of fun. Everybody, I mean, the things that I remember the most would be, in terms of outside of academics, would be the camaraderie, the going to the football games all together, with your group of people. So it would be like, might be your dorm, or it might be your fraternity or sorority, or together a fraternity and a sorority, and sitting in those sections and attending every athletic event and going to the plays and being a part of, just in general, all of the fun, the intramural sports. They were really big, and doing those things. And it was a real feeling of, I think, for the most part, it was a real feeling of family. It also was in the process in the early 70s when I started in 1974. Truly, it hadn't been that many years since we had been desegregated. And so there were people that were African American that were, living in the dorms, or were your roommates, or, and so it was a great experience in terms of getting to know others and other cultures, because it wasn't that long before that you wouldn't have seen Black and white kids in the same dorm, and you wouldn't, or in this, and so I thought that was really a good experience. And for me, I thought it was a great experience growing up, for the most part, in Colorado. We did not have a heavy African-American population, and so I took African-American studies. That was the other thing that I took a lot. And it was truly eye-opening and helped me throughout my career to understand and to be open to others, and the talents and the skills and the backgrounds that other people can bring to your business and make it more successful. And I contribute that to Western being very careful and concerned about being sure they were diverse. And I think they did a great job of that.
As you've kind of already talked a little bit about, you got started in radio. Mm-hmm. in the 80s, which was, I'm sure, as a woman in radio, trying to make a mark and trying to find your lane, it was probably a big challenge, wasn't it?
It was. I started in radio right about I think it was about 1980, and truly, there wasn't a lot of women. I mean, there were certain roles that women were in. And we'll talk about one of them, which you should never do if you're a man or a woman, which is a receptionist. We'll go back to that in a minute and why. But so you saw them a little bit in sales. You didn't see a lot of sales managers. There was one general manager that had been with a really small station in the history of Denver radio that was a female. And she wasn't there anymore. So they were all males. All of your program directors were males. Most of your air staff were males. The women were news people, or they were sidekicks, or they were people that sounded breathy and sexy, like they were going to, sleep with you that moment. They didn't have just regular jocks that were women at the time. And so they were either news, or they were, the sidekicky kind of sexy girl. And that was about it. Ditzy, and you saw them in promotion. You did see them in promotion managers, but those were really worked under the program directors. They didn't have a lot of flexibility. And then it started to change a little bit. The women started to outdo the men in sales. And that was a big factor once the women came into sales and started to be very successful, because the typical route to general manager is through sales. It's not through programming, and it's not through being on air, even though if you're great at it, the general managers come out of sales and management. So when the women started becoming the top sales reps and the top billers, then you started seeing them being, okay, they can be the local sales manager, or they can be the network sales manager, like where they work with people around, with buying services across the country. They could call on ad agencies in New York or whatever. And then it was like, well, maybe they could be the sales manager. And then finally it was, after many years, and it was probably the 90s before, at least in Denver, where you started seeing women. It was probably close to 2000 actually, before you started seeing women become general managers of major properties and regional market managers of multiple radio stations. And that's just been in the last 20 years that you've seen that.
Well, obviously you're a very smart person, because I think anybody that has been in the radio business soon understands that whole process of, if you want to have success in radio, it's through management. So at some point in time, when did you realize that you wanted to be involved in management?
Well, actually, I was very fortunate that my first job was a management job. It was promotion, but that's the low-level manager. And then they changed it to creative services manager, which is a little bit better. That's all of the creative aspects, the logo design, the contest, the games, the things that, make the things that you do to promote the station. And that's where the journalism came in, because what happened was I would start to take pictures at events and then send out press releases. And the first year that I was in radio, we got the front page of the Denver Post 3 times. And they were like, oh, we like her, And so it led to me getting, more and more promotion and being more attractive to media properties. And I eventually went to television as their marketing and creative services director. But I was interviewed many years ago in Billboard magazine. It was probably about 1988. And they asked, what's happening to the brightest and the best of the people in market and promotion, the women in radio, where are they going? And I remember saying to them, it's because those creative services a little better, but promotion managers don't make a lot of money. I mean, I was the highest paid in the market. I was fortunate, but I got, like I said, it was the journalism stuff that pushed me over the edge. And I said, what'll happen is eventually they'll start calling this a marketing director position. And then all those people will work under marketing director. When they do, they'll start paying it the same as they do the other managers in a radio station, and they'll hire men. They'll go, oh, we can afford to hire a man. And that's exactly what happened. They changed the name to marketing. And then under marketing would be your NTR, and I can go in that, which is non-traditional revenue. And then became the contesting, the games, the events, the sales of the promotional events, all that stuff fell under that realm. The advertising, placing advertising for the station on behalf of the station, for example, on television to promote the radio station. All of that started falling under marketing. And then they started almost every marketing director in the city was a man, because they could start paying good. And then eventually that leveled out too. And now it's pretty normal now, but it took a while.
So, and part of your successes were in building some of these media companies, either coming in and helping them grow, or taking over that sort of, being involved in the management part of that. So do you see certain skills develop within you that you thought, okay, well, I all of a sudden I'm better at, communicating with people? Or what kind of skill set do you think that a successful person needs to have to do those kind of things?
Well, first of all, you have to, let me take a sip here. I'm sorry. First of all, you have to realize that when you go into the media, when I started in the media, and it's no different today, there were literally 1,000 jobs that weren't secretarial related in all of Colorado. And every year, 3,000 students a year graduated in that field just from CU alone. So you have to realize it's very competitive. And that doesn't mean you can't get a job. What it means is you have to believe in yourself enough to not be intimidated by that. It also means that there's always room for a good one. I don't care. There could be 3,000 people applying, but if you're really good at what you do and you're able to communicate those skill sets that they need, you can get the job. And so I'm going to get some water. I'm so sorry, but
no,
too much talking. So what that means is that you can't be afraid to go for it, and you have to put your best foot forward. And we think sometimes because we're young, we don't have that oh, I don't have the background, or I don't
Right.
have the experience. Well, and there's a story that that I'll use, and I've told many times, and I actually told it on my first job interview, and it was actually based about Western. I said, you know, when I went to my school, Western Illinois University, you had to pass English 101. That was a requirement. And there were kids that I knew that had to take that thing 2 and 3 times. And I
Right.
took it once. They had experience. It doesn't mean anything. There's always room for a good one. And you know, and so I would tell people to do anything to get in the door, but don't be a secretary, don't be a receptionist. And the reason I say that is when you're in the media property, the first line of defense typically is a receptionist. And they're answering the phone and they're getting hundreds of phone calls a day, right?
Right.
There's no way that that person, if statistically speaking, is not going to get 1 or 2 jerks on that phone. And those jerks will call up and complain about him. And then they go, oh, the receptionist is stupid. For some reason, that's a role that everyone thinks that they're dumb. And it's because they have so much interfacing. And once you get in that mindset with them, they'll never think to promote you. It's just not a starting position. It's a dead end position. So if you're going to start in the media, look for anything, but don't look for that. Look for promotions, promotion manager, promotion assistant, I don't know, a music assistant, anything. A janitor would be better. I mean, literally, than that role, because they pigeonhole those people so quick, it's not even funny. And so I would say, if you want to be on the air, if you want to be in promotions, marketing, on the air kind of thing, do not start in that role. If you want to be a sales rep or something, you probably could, but none of the on-air programming type roles start there. They just don't give them the time of day. So, and so anyway, so as you go through the career and you look, the things that I think helped me the most were listening, you know, paying attention to what people say and what they need, and asking questions. You know, when you're, one of the skill sets that I developed over time was I was a very good closer. Even though I wasn't in sales, they would bring me to everything because I could close a deal. Not only could I close it, I could upsell it. And it was because I had a passion for what I was doing, which at that time was marketing and promotion. I loved that. I mean, I loved coming up with the creative puzzle pieces when you listen to a client and they say, what keeps you awake at night? What's your marketing problem? What's bothering you? What have you tried that hasn't worked? What, you know, and you listen to that client, they always have the answer. You know, they always have the answer. They just don't know it because they're in the middle of all the trees, you know, and they can't see it. And you listen to them and you're able to go, oh, okay, well, what if we took the X and Y and we put it together and we made this promotion for you that's geared around your needs, specifically for you. I don't like cookie cutter projects. When I was a general manager, you know, my sales staff, I would always talk to them about customizing what we have. Don't bring a proposal and hand it to somebody that day. Listen to them. Even if you're going to give them the same thing you've already written, don't give it to them that day, because it doesn't look like you paid any attention to what they need and what their needs are. And it goes the same with your listeners. You know, listeners have a need. That's why they listen to you. And you need to figure out what that need is in order to build those ratings, because that's everything, right? Without ratings, I don't care what, you can have the greatest show on earth. If nobody's listening, nobody's advertising, and you're broke. So you need to look at who are those listeners? How do you figure out who they are, you know, which is through ratings, but also psychographics, not just demographics. If your listener was a person, if you could just take your listener and roll them up into one person, who would they be? Personify that person. Are they a man? Are they a woman? Are they each? There's 2 of them. There's one, you know, because it's evenly split. Are they educated? Do they drive American cars? Do they drive imported cars? Are they farmers? Are they, you know, Wall Street people? Who are the people that are listening to you? And if you could put them and personify them, then you can make promotions and programming that will make them very happy, and they'll listen longer, and more of them will listen. If you miss that boat, if you miss that mark, then you turn them off. And when they tune you out, it's really hard to get them back in. It's really hard. And then you can take that person and you go with your advertiser, and who are they looking for? Well, if their person matches your person, you've got a great fit, you know. And so I always personified the listener of the station. And that's how I approached everything, as if they were a person. Am I doing something this person would like? Am I doing something this person would respond to? Am I doing something that my audience, as an active audience or a passive audience, would would relate to. And that's the other thing, understanding if your station is an active or a passive station. Active stations are people that are being trained by the station to do things, to play contests, to go to things, to attend functions, to be a part of something. Passive stations is like an office listening in the background. And they both have a purpose, but they have different purposes and different listeners. And so if you take something that requires an active audience participation and put it on a passive station, you will fail, even though it might be a good thing.
So when people know your job history, Rhonda, do they always want to talk about your experience at Radio Disney?
Oh, they love Radio Disney.
Yeah.
Radio Disney is like, and especially young people, because they grew up with it, and Walt Disney. That was really fun. It was a great time, and it was a wonderful opportunity to be general manager of the station. And it was truly, my kids loved it. They were young at the time, so they went nuts. I would go into my kids in elementary school. It was the only time in my life I felt like a rock star. I'd walk into school and people would see me coming, and the little kids in like third grade would start going, "Oh, it's a Radio Disney lady." And I loved Radio Disney. And that was truly a marriage of what my passion is, which is promotion and marketing and radio. And it was a true marriage of that, because what we were selling was really promotion. We had a radio station attached to it, but it was truly a whole new concept too. It was selling to the kids because the moms would be listening, and because the kids drive purchases today. Like when we were kids, I don't know about you, but I'm probably older than you, but when we were kids, our parents didn't ask us what color car they were going to buy. Hell, they just told you to shut up and get in the back seat. We're lucky we had seat belts, but and today, kids are part of these decisions that we were never part of. I mean, it was like they just bring home your clothes. They wouldn't let you pick your clothes. It was like, here, you're wearing this. And today, kids are so much a part of it that by tapping into the child's to the whole family and the child, there's a lot of marketing that can be had and made money at if you're careful. I mean, you have to be, obviously there are rules involving children's broadcasting you have to comply to, but the children have a big impact. And you'll like this, one of the funniest stories from Radio Disney was we were trying to sell a Ford dealer here in Denver to be on the air. And of course, everyone's like, at that time, it was like 2000. They're like, oh, kids, car dealer. And I said, look, let me just tell you one thing. People come in here to buy a car. Family, because you're a family. Yep. I said, okay. And they have their whole family with them on a Saturday. Yep. I said, and they sit down to buy a car. Mm-hmm. And what they tell you is they love the car. Everything's perfect about the car. What's the number one reason they use for not buying your car right then? I'm guessing part of it is, we'll come back without the kids. We can't do this with the kids here. And I said, but what I'm going to do is make it so I don't care if one other person comes in your dealership that would have normally come in, your closing rate's going to go up, because we're going to take care of the kids. We're going to be here on site with all the Disney stuff. They're going to be so happy to be here playing games and stuff. You can sell the car to mom and dad and they won't leave, because you and I both know when they leave your dealership, you may or may not get them back, but the chances of getting them back are about this big. And if I can keep those kids happy for an hour while you play whatever game you play with them, you're going to sell more cars. And they were like, we'll give it a try. And sure enough, that became one of our mainstay clients. And it wasn't because we brought any more people in. It was because mom and dad, when they were going to look for a car that weekend, heard, because they were listening to Radio Disney in the car, because their kids make them, that we were going to be at Silterhar Ford, for example. And then they would go to Silterhar Ford knowing that the kids would be taken care of. Or if they just stumbled in there, they were thrilled that their kids were getting to play with all the Disney things and not bother them as they looked at the vehicle. So it's a matter of really, no matter what you're in broadcasting, it's not the same as it used to be. It's not just putting on a commercial and people will show up. It's so much more than that. And it's understanding all the tools that are in your war chest. So when you sit down with a customer or a client, you're able to present a full picture and an array of things that may help them, where one thing might not, but the combination might. And the same thing with the listener. You have to be able to present the listener with a variety of options today, because they don't sit down and listen the way they used to listen. It's not, you got 4 stations in the market and this one's cool and the rest of them aren't, and I'm going to listen all day long. They just don't do that. And so you have to be really conscious about what you're putting in front of them and how you're attracting them to come back and visit you again and again and again and build that listenership. So that's what I learned over the years in terms of was how to do that. I had a knack for it, I think some people have a knack for it. I had a knack because I've always been somebody in the sorority and everything else where I'd come up with some stupid idea and the whole world would be like, that's really fun. Let's do it. You know, so you have to have a knack for that, understanding people. And then you have to have a solid business understanding of what it means to be able to attract and turn that into money. You know, you have to be able to turn it into money or you don't have a business.
Yeah, well, obviously you are a creative and a problem solver. And I want to go back to, did your kids realize that mom is kind of a big deal even when you're just talking about Radio Disney, but you've done wonderful things in other businesses too, but did they ever really kind of say, mom, we understand that's what you're doing is pretty neat, doing some of these things like being a GM at a station?
Well, I think they grew up in it. I was always in media, so they knew it. And media kids are spoiled. My daughter went into it for a while, as a matter of fact. My older daughter was in it for a little bit. A lot of people, you'll see it be multi-generational because they see the fun. It's changed a lot now, though. It's not the same industry as it was then. But yeah, they think they kind of grew up spoiled and they don't realize it until you're not in it anymore. Because like now, when I first got out of it, I went. One of my kids, I said, do you want to go to a Bronco game? And they're like, do we have a suite? I'm like, no, we're regular people now. And they're like, oh. So they get a little spoiled because it's the things that you get to go to, that really provide you with like if your client's the circus, then you've got front row tickets and your kids get to go ride the elephant. If you're on the air and you're doing a live broadcast from somewhere really cool, like I got to do a live broadcast rappelling down 32 stories of a building. I mean, that was like the coolest thing ever. And my kids did it too. They were like, can we do it? I'm like, I'll ask. Like most people wouldn't throw their kids off a building, but I did. And so, it's things like that. It was the perks of the business, so to speak, that they got used to. I don't know if they were ever really spoiled because, they had to realize, and I was very careful to make them understand that was a gift. And that we're going to be polite when we're there, and we're going to be generous with other people, and we're going to take some of these free tickets and give them to charities and things like that. But yeah, I think they did. I mean, mostly they realized, I'm just their crazy mom. They were just like, oh God, here she is again. What are you doing now, Mom?
Of course. Keep us humble, I think, is their intent there.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. Honestly, I was in television for a while too. I was a marketing and creative services director at the CBS station here in Denver, and that was one of the only women in the country doing that as well. And I liked radio better. It was a really great experience, though, for me. It was a great experience in management. It was a great experience entering into a truly still a man's world. And it was a great experience in using some of those skill sets that I hadn't used since college when I was in when I was in the classes where we're learning how to do the switchers and the boards and all of that, and the tapes and the running the beta tape and making it, and I had to suddenly supervise people doing that. And so I had to call back on those skills because I had never done it. They just liked me because I had done such a good job in promoting the radio station I was with. When we launched Cool, I was part of the team that launched Cool Radio in Denver, and it became #1 in every single demographic, 12 plus, 12 plus, 18, 34, 25, 54, every demographic, it was #1. And so then when that happens, people want you. And the station had approached me, and I decided to shift over to television and did that for a while. And and I hadn't done anything with other than the classrooms at WIU and television and the station there. And I was like, oh God, now I'm going to be managing this department. I'm responsible for all of their promos that you see when you see Coming Up Tonight on 7 News, all of their imaging, all of their promotions, like when they had the Lipizan Stallions come and you could win tickets and they did a promotion, their events, marketing their events, which was all normal. But the TV piece was new to me other than college. And it had been about 10 years. And I was like, oh my God. And, sure enough, I mean, I knew enough. I didn't have the experience, but I knew enough from the courses. I knew enough from what I had learned, even though the technology had changed a bit, to understand what it took to do it. So I was better able to talk to the guys who worked for me and for us to, work as a team. And I had some wonderful people. One thing about broadcasting, it takes a team. It never is one person. And you are as good as the people you hire, and that is it. and to not recognize that, and to not be grateful for that to them in many ways is a sin that you'll never be forgiven of later in your career, because they all move up and they all go places.
Yeah.
And plus it's the right thing to do. You know, and there's a lot of people in this business that throw you under a bus in a heartbeat. But you know, I found that I don't need to be the best at it. I just need to know how to hire the best. And that's what I was good at, was hiring the best and letting them do their job and giving them credit. Because guess what? I got credit when we went over budget 600%, or I got credit when, you know, we went up in the ratings. I don't need to steal their thunder. I just need to be able to know who can make the thunder and then put them there and treat them well. And so, you know, that's one thing I would tell you never to forget, is that you are a team. Never throw anybody under the bus. Never, never, never. And if someone does it to you, never forget it. You know?
One of the things I really noticed about your career as well, you know, in the Denver area, you've been involved with a lot of nonprofit
Yes.
organizations. Again, I think that shows just personal growth, and you probably have been involved with those kind of things all your life. But I see that as a really important thing for people to consider, to give back as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's very important. Not only is it important as a business person, whether you're in media or anything else, you need to establish yourself as part of a viable part of the community you live in. Because when times get tough, people will support you. If something goes wrong, people will say, well, it's not a bad company. They just did a bad thing. It was a mistake. You get some grace when you give grace to others. And that's what I call that. And so I have been involved. Yes, I have. I started, my very first charity involvement was the Listen Foundation for Hearing Impaired Children, which is when I produced, we supported them through the Delta Zeta alumni group that I was in. And they're the ones that said, oh, we have an opening to produce the KIMN Listen Radiothon. And then I went and did that. And of course, I was grateful to them over the years, and stayed involved on their board of directors. I'm still on their board 40 some years later. You know, I'm the longest standing person on their board, and treated them well throughout the years that I was in media. And then I've also branched out, part of a couple of charities, a couple of nonprofits in town. And I would say you pick your passion, and you don't join it because it's going to benefit you. I mean, people can read that. Same thing with networking. People that network, most of them don't do it right. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. But networking, and it's the same thing as networking. You don't do it because what am I going to get out of this today? Where am I going to find this? How's it going to benefit me? Because people see right through that. So pick something that you have a passion about. If you're passionate about children that have hearing loss, if you're passionate about cancer, if you're passionate about MS, pick something that you're passionate about, and and volunteer and get to know people and go to the functions, and don't overcommit. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Just do something little if that's all you can do. But it gets out there, and you start meeting people and find out about their stories, and be helpful to them. What I found was the best thing that you could ever do in terms of networking, whether that's with nonprofit community or it's with the business community, is when I talk to someone, I call this having cats in the attic and bats in the belfry. And what that is there's not, I mean, I stop 100 times a day. I'll see a billboard and stop, take a picture of it, or I'll meet somebody and jot it down in this little file that I have. And what it is it's an idea spark. And I know that someday, somewhere, that idea will be important to me. It might not be the exact idea. It might just be one phrase, one word, one little thing, but somewhere that's going to fit in. And I try to remember that. And then when I'm networking, if I'm meeting somebody and they say, I'm Joe Schmo, I'm a plumber. What kind of plumbing do you do? Well, I'm a contractor. I do commercial plumber. Oh, really? Well, have you met Joe Smith? He's here today, and he's the marketing director for, I don't know, Cabela Homes. You know, I should introduce you to him. You guys might be able to do some business together. And you introduce him. There's no benefit for me there, but you know what? There is. And in the long run, when you become the conduit, or you become the person that's helpful, when it's time for you to ask for help, and you don't even have to ask for it. When it's like you make an announcement, hey, I'm the general manager of the radio station, so if any of you have any needs, let me know. Those people line up because they know you've helped them, and they've seen your worth. So it's very important to network. It's very important to do it from your heart, not to do it because of, you know, you can recognize those guys that shake your hand, oh, I'm here, and they shove the business card in your face, and it's like, get out of here. Are they going to talk to that, or are they going to talk to the person that says, hardwood flooring? I think my office is looking at doing that. Here's the guy's name. I don't know if you'll get anywhere with it, but maybe it'll help you. Oh, thank you. use my card when you call them. Now they want your card.
So you've kind of given what I always appreciate at the end of our podcast is we try to spend a little bit of time to say, if you can give advice for students, and you've already kind of along the way given us little hints of things that, about that students could use today to help them. But overall, can you kind of summarize what you think would be a philosophy in terms of a student that's interested in the business?
Mm-hmm. It depends on what aspect of it, of course. But number one, if you're going to be on air, be sure you have a tape. Don't walk out that door without getting tapes, because that's what they're going to listen to you on. You need one. Now, today, with equipment that you have at home, you can probably make one, but it will be better in a studio. And have your professor listen to that tape. If you can get somebody that's a mentor, listen to that tape. A lot of times they might not have an opening, but if you call up someone and say, I know you're the program assistant or the program director. I'm not calling for a job, but I would really wonder if you've got 10 or 15 minutes to just give me some advice. I could use some advice. Listen to my tape. What do you think? If you can get them to help you, then they're vested in your success. And eventually they might remember, oh, that person came in, I've got their tape, because you really have to be able to present yourself to them, and getting through to the right person is very difficult in this day and age. So, so asking for help or advice or doing an internship. Absolutely. A lot of kids get hired from internships. I could tell you that that's one of the best ways to get a job. So if you've got a good internship program, get in there and get it, whether it's in sales or it's in marketing or it's in on-air management, whatever it is, do the internship. And then, if you can work part-time for them and do something, like I said, not a secretary, not a receptionist, they'll never get anywhere, but any of those other roles, I would do that. I would say never stop believing that you can do it. I mean, just because there's 5,000 people applying, it doesn't mean that 4,999 of them are going to be the wrong person. And so you may as well be the right person. So believe that you have that skill set and that you can do it. And don't be afraid to talk about what you can do. You don't want to be arrogant, but don't be afraid to say, yeah, great, I'm out of school, but I'm really good at this. And I know I'm open for learning, and I'll make a few mistakes along the way, but I'll be a good hire for you. And you tell them why. One of the interviews I had, my first interview, one of the first ones, they said to me, how do we know this is really important? I think it was the Radiothon interview for the 3-month job. And I was in front of a board of directors, and they said, how do we know you're not going to make a mistake? This is really important. And I remember looking up and saying, oh, let me just clear this up right now. I'm going to make one. I said, I might make 3. I said, but I'm going to learn really quick.
Yeah.
And so don't be afraid when they hire you. And the thing you want to look for too is, do they have a program for new employees? What's their mentor program like for new? And I don't mean new to the company. I mean young people that are 19, 20, 21, 22, going in for the first time to a professional job. If they don't have a good program, because there's a responsibility that comes with hiring someone who's just graduated from school. And that responsibility is giving them the tools they need to succeed. If they don't have a program to do that, it's not the right company for you.
Well, I think that's some great advice. And Rhonda, I don't know if you've been back to Macomb in years. I haven't
been recently, but we're talking about having a get together in the next year or two there.
Okay. Well, we'd love to have you visit our classes, come back and see us, because you have such a great story to share. And the words, I think, can benefit a lot of students. I definitely appreciate that you have shared your experiences, and just to say, we're really proud of what you've done. I think it's awesome, the inroads that you've made.
Thank you. I mean, it's been a great career. Like I told you, I've won numerous broadcast awards and Emmys, and it's been all wonderful. And really, I never went back to school, so it's all WIU.
Well, I think that's a lot of, a lot of creativity and a lot of personal work ethic, and we're definitely proud of what you've accomplished.
And I would tell your students, if there are any that are coming out here to Colorado and they want to, you can feel free to share, because I would be happy to listen to a tape or two if you have a student that needs that. So,
well, awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you. Take care. Nice.
And for all those that are watching the weekly podcast, we just want to make sure to say, if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast or know somebody that might be, just send me an email. We want to hear from our alums, and we hope that you will continue to watch and listen to the podcast each week. We really appreciate everyone's support. So until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.